Amber, and today we are going to be reviewing, I was about to say again, but better, Better Together by Christine Riccio, and it has this gorgeous cover and this gorgeous back cover, and this book was everything that I was expecting and everything that I wasn't expecting. And I feel like that's just my motto for things lately. This book had some things, like I said before, in a lot of videos too. This is my thing now. I don't know. Will it go away? I don't know. It had some things that I didn't quite agree with. Things I would have liked explained a little bit more. Things that I felt didn't really fit. But overall, great book. I didn't like the two main characters, the sisters, at first. Or I just had this weird feeling about both of them. I'm like, I felt they were too naive, and that's coming from someone who really likes naive characters, but they just were like drama and angst, and it's literally like the theme of this book, and I understand, but it's like, you two are adults, and this is insane. I mean, like, granted, at that age, I probably got into a few problems myself, probably made a few of those mistakes, and I think I'm just looking at it from the point of view of like me now reflecting on me then and the mistakes I made back then, and therefore like going on that. So I think that's just what it is. But yeah, I think having grown from that, I'm looking at it differently now. But I feel like her other character, Shane, was more me now, even though she was, I think, younger, which is really weird. It was just a lot to dissect because there was a lot of things going on. But then again, that was probably me at that age, so we're not gonna judge too much. And I feel like as the book went on, it kind of spread out enough and you understood it enough where it was just like, okay, this is not so much to digest anymore. This is something that makes sense now, and there's all these events happening and all these things have their place and are happening with this, and I can understand that. But so this book centers around two points of view. It's from Siri's point of view and it's from Jamie's point of view. And I I would have thought Siri would have been on the front cover, just my opinion, because I felt like she was more of the lead. But that being said, it's okay. I just also think because like the book kind of started with her, it would have made sense. Did the book start with her? The book started with her. Okay, I was right about that. Also, got it signed. I'm so happy. Oh my goodness. Okay, ignore my dad. Okay, and Siri is 18. And sustained a major back injury. She does ballet, and it forces her to basically quit ballet. We start off the book with her finding out that she's not going to be able to go back, and she wanted to. She thought she was going to be able to, and like basically, she feels like her whole life has ended. I think in this book, I related more to Siri, and I like the character Siri more, even though I feel like I'm more like Jamie. But like, I gravitated towards Siri more just because how she had this vibe of like just a kind and humble soul. Not that Jamie didn't, but there was just a lot of things within Jamie that she later like had to figure out, and she pushed a lot of people away, and it just, there was so much negativity I felt that she had to go through, where it was just nicer to read the series chapters because you got to see her kind of finding herself, whereas Jamie, you were reading it and you found her getting more into trouble, and it's not that she like didn't figure things out, but that was more towards the end. So in that sense, I'm happy that she got her happy ending in that, but it was just much more mellow and relaxing to read series chapters and read Jamie through series chapters. Not that it wasn't entertaining to read Jamie's chapters. Um, so these two sisters, basically they had like the whole parent trap situation where one child went with the my light, I swear, every single time. One child went with one parent and the other child went with the other parent. And this one ended in a very nasty divorce, and these parents are not getting back together whatsoever, even though they have still a lot in common, I believe. Like, it's just not even that I believe. It's like, it's very apparent that they have a lot in common. And like, they can't even be in the same room with each other. And these two sisters, I thought they were going to be twins, but they're not twins. They do look very much alike, which in the cover it doesn't look like it. And the way they describe them in the beginning, it doesn't really seem like it until like they meet each other. Then suddenly it's like, I don't know, the way that their facial features was described and everything, it kind of like morphed a little bit from the beginning, and suddenly they like looked a lot like each other, and suddenly they had like different facial features from the beginning. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like we were told something in the beginning, and then it was kind of tweaked a little bit to be like, no, this is what they look like, and they look very much alike. But then it's like the more you read the book, it's also saying the other things too, and it's like, how alike do these two look? Because I'm not really buying it, but I do believe that they can look alike, but just based on what was written, I am a little hesitant about that. But Siri was a child when Jamie and the dad left, and Jamie was all about moving with her dad. She wanted nothing to do with Siri anymore. She felt like she was living in her shadow because she was a little sister, always wanting to like be around and take the spotlight and everything. Like, you know, like little siblings do. They want to be around their bigger sister, and she was not about that. And so she's like, "Peace, I'm leaving. Goodbye." Um, and she left her little sister, and so Siri's 18, and then Jamie is 20 for the majority of the book, and then she's 21 at the end of the book. And so Siri ends up living with the mom. Jamie ends up living with the dad. The mom is she gets on my nerves, but in the end, I feel like she does better. And I guess it's forgivable, not forgivable. It's more like we can forgive her, but not forget about the things that happened. She's more like she's redeeming herself, trying desperately to just kind of make good with her daughters and know that she made mistakes and everything. But in the beginning, she was just very overbearing and like she just got on my nerves. Like I just didn't understand why she was not paying attention to her daughter. She was more preoccupied in work and this and that. But then Siri was also very close to her. So it was this interesting dynamic where it was like she was close to her mother. She spent a lot of time with her mother, but then also didn't spend a lot of time with her mother and didn't have her around when she needed to because she wasn't around a lot. So she was really preoccupied with work. And she kind of put Siri's wants and what she needed aside. And for Jamie, her father was not around at all, but he still was very on how she looked, what she did, what, like, all these different things. And I think, like, in that way, they were just both, like, very overbearing parents, like, very controlling. Um, at first, her grandmother, the grandmother from the dad's mother, seemed that way towards Jamie, but then she kind of changed a little bit, and it wasn't like I was just kind of like, oh, like that's not okay that these characters are like changing. Like it worked, but I noticed it. I noticed that it's like this character isn't like how they were previously, or this character suddenly changed. It wasn't like growth. It was just like they just were different. But that was just something I noticed. But it was still good. And it I feel like with how the book was going, it worked, but I just was confused about that. And so then the mom's dad is also around, and he's there with Siri, and he's kind of like just like this humble grandpa and everything. It's kind of like how the dad was around in The Parent Trap with the mom. It's very similar to that. And so he is like the sweet loving grandpa, but obviously loves his daughter and has kept this secret for however many years. And they coincidentally, both these sisters end up just at a point in their lives where they don't know what to do. Jamie, for her career is like not working out. She's a stand-up comedian, and she has extreme stage fright, and she when she performs, she gets into the groove, and then she messes up. Like, she does a pitch perfect, and she throws up on the audience. And that's just what she does when she's nervous, or is not liking the situation and gets anxiety. She just vomits, and it's kind of disgusting. But yeah, and so that's how she deals with stress. And then she also does this improv thing with her best friend and everything. But she's just at a point where she's just like, she failed at this gig. She doesn't know what to do with her life. So then I think it mentioned that it was Siri's mom suggested, or they were looking into the whole like camp where they went in the retreat, that they went to go find themselves. And then it was Jamie's grandma. But later we found out that it was, I swear, every time I try to film a video, something starts going crazy, and it's quite annoying. Um, but anyway, it's later revealed that it's both the grandparents that they met, or they ran into each other, and they wanted the girls to get to know each other. They wanted their families back together, not like they wanted the parents back together. They just wanted them to be around each other. So they both planned for them to go on this trip, not knowing that all this was going to happen. I don't know what their plan was to get everyone back together. I don't think I remember if they said like, oh, they were just going to bring everybody back together, or they hoped that they had met, because I don't think they knew that they had met. So anyway, both these girls, they go on this retreat. They try to make the most out of it, both in their own way. Siri by kind of distancing herself from everyone, Jamie by talking to everybody, and that is her way of just kind of like coping with like society. It's so funny because like she doesn't like for people to like her hear her sets and like judge her on that, but she is nonstop talking all the time. So she's very sarcastic. She kind of gets on my nerves sometimes, because sometimes it's like, what just came out of your mouth? I'm not okay. Okay, do I understand this? No. In that aspect, I do not relate to her at all, because I'm just like, uh-huh. I just, I didn't understand everything that she was saying. Um, but yeah, Syria kind of avoids everyone. And then they kind of run into each other in like the showers. Siri's coming out, Jamie tries to go in, and then boom. And then Jamie's like, Siri, and then Siri's like, I don't know who you are. And then she's like, I'm Jamie. And then the mom had apparently told Siri that Jamie wasn't real and it was a figment of her imagination, and Siri had to go to therapy to have this like imaginary friend removed from her life and get over that and everything. And now she's finding out that she's real. So Siri's freaking out. And in this moment, I'm just kind of like, a lot is happening, and I'm not sure this is how I would have dealt with it or wrote it, but I'm not the author. But it just was like, I don't think we realize how much therapy at this moment in the book Syria had gone through, because I wasn't truly on board with how much she was freaking out until later on, when I realized, oh my goodness, like, she legit like had to go through extensive therapy. I hear my dog outside my door, and she's just sitting there, and I'm just like, I'm filming a video, but I want to go get her. So she, like, poor kid, like, I feel so bad for her. And so then they run into each other, and Jamie tries to convince Siri that she's real for the next, like, day and a half, and then finally, like, it is revealed what happened, and then they go through, like, a therapy process there at the camp, and then the last day they're like, hey, let's go for a hike, let's get to know each other a little bit more. I've had time to process this and everything. And they go on a hike, and they end up in this cabin, and they find this, like, treasure chest. They open it up, and there's this, I think, box, and they open that up, and suddenly there's, like, well, Jamie opens it up, because she's, like, the wild child of the book, and then there's glitter everywhere, and then on the play ride home, they, like, end up, the way that they explained it, or the way that the author explained it, was that they looked down, they saw their body. They looked in a mirror, they saw the other person. And at this point, they had already agreed, through Jamie's persistence, that because she was the one that came up with the idea, they switch and pretend to be each other. Jamie dyed her hair and everything. They decided that they looked enough like each other that they could pull it off. And they end up doing that, but end up looking completely like the other person anyway. And so there's, like, it's a no-brainer that this person is that person based on how they look like. And they don't know how it happened. The book doesn't explain how it happened. It just happened. Apparently, this book takes place in the same world as Again But Better, because those characters come out later on, and so there's definitely magic in this world. But even though, like, the magic was explained in Again But Better, this one wasn't, and it made sense in that book with, like, the lady coming out, and she was, like, kind of helping them out and everything. And here it just kind of happened, and then there was no explanation. I'm like, is it related to that, or is it just like there's magic in this world? I don't know. And apparently, like, the camp, like, leader, she ends up, like, having gone through the same thing, but it was sort of different for her. She, like, just kind of got what she wanted. And then there was another lady that apparently got what she wanted, but it's not exactly what happened to them. But she was like, hey, that same thing happened to me here and at this camp. And it was just like, but it's not the same thing. And I don't think that was really explained thoroughly. Or the girls were just like, no, it was Jamie who was talking to her, and she was just like, okay. And I'm just like, are we gonna talk about the fact that these things literally aren't the same thing and literally happen at the same camp, and is this camp magic, and do all the magical people live here, grant wish? I don't know what's happening. Like, what is happening? So that's where I'm at with that. So Jamie ends up going to her mom's and terrorizing her mother. Siri ends up going to her dad's, and she tries to make the most of it, and she tries to live Jamie's life to the fullest. She tries to just do her best. She ends up falling for Jamie's best friend, and they are just so cute together, and I love it. Jamie ends up falling for a guy that was at camp, and he was like a camp leader. This guy, at first, I wasn't so sure about him. I ended up really liking him, but, like, how they introduced him, like, I was just like, I don't know. He was going around camp. He loved the idea of falling in love, and he wanted to fall in love. Great for you. Props. I love that. But he was going around camp with a stack of, like, flyers and bumping into girls, and seeing, like, after, like, he had dropped everything and they had helped him pick them up, if they were potentially wanting to go out with him, and I'm just like, I I'm not feeling this right now. Like, okay, that's how you're doing it. You're clearly a really sweet guy, and this is how we first meet. No, I don't. No, and he does it with Siri at first, and then like Siri's just like nah, and like walks away, and it's just like Jamie ends up being the one, which her encounter isn't all that different from Siri, despite the fact that they just keep talking more, and like he just like she's the one, and just like I don't know, I would have liked more with that. I would have liked that done a little differently. I mean, later on, I guess it's kind of cute, but it's like no. um, and so then later on in the book, she ends up in New York where Siri lives, because Siri lives in New York, Jamie lives in California. She is not about relationships. She's about kind of like going, hooking up, having a moment, and not getting hurt. And she calls them snow globe moments. She's like, okay, we have this pristine little moment that we can keep in the snow globe and remember forever, and it will never be tainted. We can think about it and be like, oh, like, but that's it. So it's interesting. And so she ends up running into him because he lives in New York, and because and there's a little note when like they got glitter bombed and everything, basically saying like the rules and everything, but they lost it. It said that basically they could tell one person, and funny enough, once they tell each of the people, Siri ends up being the best friend, and then Jamie ends up being the guy. They sneeze on them, and then there's glitter everywhere, and it's just kind of like okay. And then for Jamie, it happens in the subway, and it's like a glitter explosion in like the train, and then like I felt like it was cute, but it was just kind of like they sneezed, and then once they like lift everything, and like then they both sneeze on each other, and then there's glitter everywhere, and they can only tell one person, and they can see them again. Then they spend the majority of the book with these people because they're the only ones that like know and they can see them, and so they're trying to do all these things. Series like trying to make sure Jamie gets her gigs and like is doing well and everything, and Jamie is like more trying to figure herself out than just doing what Siri is supposed to be doing, and just terrorizing her mother. And then they part of the plan is that they're catfishing their mother to get her to Vegas, and trying to get their father to Vegas too. So they tell the mom that there's this big dance ballet thing that they want to do for Broadway. But they pretend to be someone else, and so they want to hire her, and so they want her to go over. She goes over. The dad, he goes over because Siri ends up telling him that that Jamie has a gig, and but she's Jamie, and that her dad to come support her, and her dad's like, yeah, okay. And so then they go, and Jamie ends up revealing how jealous she is of Siri because she did so well in even her life, and Siri was just trying to do right by her sister and figure herself out, and Jamie, like, she was figuring things out, but like at the same time, like, she was growing envious of her sister and like pushing people away still. um and so she gets mad at Siri because she ends up like having a relationship that's short lived because she has to leave with her best friend, and it's all these things. And so Jamie's just upset. They encountered uh they they basically trap the parents in the hotel room. They have one parent there. Siri is like confronting the dad, and the dad doesn't recognize that Siri, because at this point they have changed. In order for them to change back, they have to say something um, like real and true about the situation and themselves. And Jamie says something that's not so nice to Siri. She says that she's like envious of her and everything, and so they're not good, obviously. and the dad doesn't recognize that that's not the daughter. Um, but like the dad doesn't really pay attention. The dad's a little bit of a jerk. So yeah, and then the mom comes in, and at this point the mom is still frustrating, and she's like, this is Siri, and then the dad's like, no, it's Jamie, no, it's, and then Jamie comes out, and then like the mom is like, oh my goodness, like my daughter like obviously knows that I have lied to her and have manipulated her. And then it's like this whole big scene, and then they're basically interrupted by both the grandparents who say, hey, we're the ones who kind of like arranged this whole thing, stop yelling at each other. Both, like they all get into a fight and everything. Jamie ends up going to stay with her grandpa, and then they end up in um in New York and everything. And Jamie tries to figure things out for herself. Siri ends up doing the same, and then they end up kind of meeting up again, and figuring things out. Siri is seeing the same therapist that she saw over at camp. She realizes she's in New York, and they kind of just make good with each other, and they try to make good with their parents, and they go to therapy together. And the mom seems like she really wants to be in Jamie's life. The dad is more so like, yeah, of course I want to be in your life, and then still is like the dad. um, and then it kind of all works out where like they both end up figuring things out. Eventually they both end up in California. Jamie ends up moving in with her now boyfriend, and Siri ends up going back to the best friend after like some time that she took for herself, and then they're together. I will say how Christine ended up tying in the couple from her previous book was done very nicely. They came out as like one of them was the guy's boss, and then obviously like Shane's his fiance and everything, and then they like become friends with them like and show up in events, but it's not like they're always around. But in the end, they're like they show up a lot in like the events that happen. I loved how Jamie was like she recognized them right away, and it kind of like integrated them more into the book. They in the prior book had filmed like the cover of Wrecking Ball before Wrecking Ball, and they posted it on YouTube. And Jamie coincidentally was the one that saw that, and she's like, "You're the Wrecking Ball guy," and it's just like this wonderful moment of just like and so like yeah, I just really like this book. There were a couple of things where I'm just like, eh. I will say the end with Donia, like it felt like Siri was like trying too hard and like making everything seem like it was wonderful when there was clearly still things going on. And Jamie kind of like highlighted those things, but I felt like Jamie's was a little too like I don't know, like pessimistic. Like I just felt like those letters to Donia could have been written better, and I guess been felt a little bit more like the end of the book because it was the end of the book. And so for that, I don't feel like I like the ending. I know there's some books out there, the Barnes and Noble one, I think it is, that have like another chapter for the ending, and I feel like maybe if I read that, that would help me out. But then again, like not a lot of us have that ending, so I'm not sure. But I'll go and check that out and see maybe if I can do something with that, like in a video or something. But yeah, this book, 4 out of 5 stars, highly recommend, and it was a great read. But that's basically it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all real soon. Bye.